I think when you look through it through the lens of CPG, I think two things really stand out that a brand like ours and our fellow brands out there, really are working on is consistency, right? You have a Coca-Cola on the East Coast, it's the same as a Coca-Cola on the West Coast. So allowing consumers to be in different parts of the country and have that same consistent dosage and texture. Then the second is really, to win the trust of the consumer who's going to choose Kana because they know that it's a consistent, dosing product. So it's about us getting the message of kind of the better qualities of our product and having consumers engage with that. And, I think B2B works much more on kind of a logical front, but B2C advertising is much more emotional. So how do you convey, the positive traits of Kana that's going to cause an emotional, positive connection with the consumer? And then, of course, we're constrained on using Facebook and all sorts of different digital media platforms because we're a bad cannabis company. So all of which is changing. We will get there. It's all one step at a time. But it is exciting to figure out how to get that message across that a CPG company needs to do to build a national brand.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest parts is the fragmentation in these different states, and for both those reasons, right? Consistency, and you need that large footprint to build like a big national brand and drive that awareness, and then you have the limitations of marketing. Coca-Cola can put ads everywhere. Unfortunately, the cannabis industry, you're quite limited on where you can advertise and market your products. I notice you guys are in more states than California, and you're also, I believe, have some products in Canada. How do you guys look at that and like the structure? Are you guys working with licensed producers in those markets? Are you guys directly on the ground in those markets? Has it been challenging to scale in this industry?
Well, the first challenge we have that no other industry has is that all product needs to be grown, manufactured, sold, and consumed in a single state. So everything in California is grown, manufactured here, which means we can't ship across state lines. So we have to open up and replicate our whole production facility in these new states. So that is extremely, challenging and also, has a capital expenditure component to it as well. So this quarter, we've launched in Colorado, Massachusetts, and Nevada. We've chosen these states because they're each adult use states that are $1 billion or bigger. Colorado is clearly the number 2 market behind California. Massachusetts has been a little newer, but is a really big, deep market already for adult use. And, Nevada had a little downtick with COVID because of tourism, but it's actually coming back super strong today. So for us to have to justify setting up a brand new end-to-end production facility, the market just simply has to be big enough for it to be worthwhile. We have to be able to sell enough products. So we're excited to be in these states. We're in about 10% of the dispensaries in each of these states after only being open for a couple of months. So we feel like we're on a good trajectory. Each of these states, we really set up our own facility and manage production ourselves. We do have a local license partner in a couple of them. Canada is really our only licensing agreement that is currently active, where we've actually trained a local partner in Canada who then is manufacturing under our guidelines and kind of quality control. And so it's a relatively new. I think the product just got on the shelves at the end of last quarter, at the end of the fourth quarter in 2020. So it's pretty new, but they're making some sales and progress. It's always this trade-off between a licensing deal like we've seen between brands and maybe multi-state operators versus going in and doing it yourself and kind of controlling your intellectual property, but having the challenge of bandwidth and capital, capex. So each state we really look at in its uniqueness, and we'll make a determination on what's the best way to enter. But our goal is to be a national, edibles brand. And, to do that, we've got to have a presence across the country.
Yeah, I can only imagine the CapEx costs that are required. But I can see how you get the benefits of some of the control of production. So a consumer that's in California that maybe goes to Las Vegas for a vacation and picks up the product, and it's the same experience. Canada is interesting. It's the restrictions. Every state has different restrictions in different ways, but Canada with their edibles is part of what they called their 2.0 cannabis, because when they first legalized federally, edibles weren't available. And there's some significant restrictions. Like I believe a single package can only come in 10 milligrams. Which is quite different than what we see in the U.S. While the suggested serving size generally is 10 milligrams. But you can buy a 100 milligram package, and get 10 gummies or however many, and that. So I imagine that was quite different experience for Sunderstorm, and I could see why you might license up there. Not to mention it's an entirely different country.
Yes, and so it's the limitation on what you can put in a package, and honestly, a lot of the expense comes in packaging, and so whether there's one gummy in there or 20 gummies in there, certain things have the same cost. So it really works against the consumer because it drives up costs ridiculously. Secondly, they don't really allow marketing, and so you can't have colorful packaging and what a typical CPG company would create, without that kind of two hands tied behind your back. So marketing is really tricky, what you can and cannot do, and that's one of the reasons why we chose a local partner, because they're on the ground there and have a better idea of what the regs are than we do in California.
Yeah, certainly different. Everything is pretty plain. I think a small logo, single color on the package, and then that packaging waste. Hopefully they change it at some point, because it just is not ideal for the category. Speaking of expansion, and you mentioned earlier, California is where many things start, and expand out from there. You guys looking at working with any others? You're starting to see some of these larger multi-state operators scaling up with, a footprint in some of these limited license markets that certainly aren't at the $1 billion threshold that you guys like, or some of those markets are getting there, medical and so on. We've seen some strategies where California brands have licensed their products with some of those organizations that might have some of the scale and some of the expertise to create that. Is that a strategy that you guys like, or is that would you prefer to go into those markets directly as a CPG brand?
It's a strategy that we're definitely in conversations on. I think it's difficult for a company to, set up operations in 20 states. It makes a lot more sense if you're going to do a licensing arrangement to do it with a company that's got a footprint across multiple states, so you can train once and have a bigger bang for the buck. So it's definitely something that we're considering, and definitely more and more companies are heading down that path.
Yeah. It seems like, you guys are in one of the most, if not the most competitive market there in California. And if you can build a brand there, it seems like in these limited license, kind of less competitive markets, you'd have some significant advantages, kind of trial by fire. And so I can see why the MSOs would look to brands like yours to kind of bring to those, instead of maybe trying to develop them, themselves directly.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I look at the leading brands in California have had the most intense competition, and it forces you to raise your ball game, right? As a result of that, so I do feel that there's, a strong kind of desire for California brands across the country. California and probably New York, and maybe Miami set the stage for kind of fashion, music. And, cannabis, I would say California definitely sets the standard. So people know that, we have the best, which is not to say that there's, not significant progress being made in these other states as well. So it'll be very curious to see how California brands head east, and the MSOs that are based back east head west. I think that will be an exciting thing for cannabis fans to look to see how it evolves over the next couple years.
Thanks for joining CPG, the Cannabis Packaged Goods Podcast. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.